Bienvenido al podcast de The Way. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar con confianza, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a mejorar su inglés y alcanzar sus objetivos. Visita nuestra web theway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos online desde A2 hasta C1 y descubre cómo podemos ayudarte a avanzar en tu aprendizaje. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen Linguistics cómodamente desde casa.
Hello. Welcome
Hello.
another episode of Real Life, Real English. Today we are joined by James, who I actually found through TikTok. However, he's also on Instagram, YouTube, and many other platforms. And he's a teacher from Barcelona. James, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What does the audience need to know?
Well, I'm an English teacher, of course. I think basically my story, I think I can start with if you like. That would be the first
definitely.
place.
Yeah.
So I'm from a city in North England in Yorkshire called Leeds. It's not one of the biggest cities, but I really like where I grew up. I think it's a really beautiful place. And when I was growing up, I did many different things. I thought I wanted to be a scientist.
Wow.
When I was younger. Yeah, I went to university to study physics for some reason, but I was always fascinated by languages. I really enjoyed my classes when I was a kid, but I couldn't concentrate in them. I had French and German. I really liked that. And then I just started learning. I started learning Polish of my own accord because I wanted to learn something different.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, let's see what this is all about. Started to learn it myself with a book, trying to learn the grammar, the Michel Thomas method, if you've heard of that. I tried that one as well. And I did it. I went to Poland and spoke Polish to people, and it felt really good. That was when I was 18.
Okay, so that might explain something because I was going through some of your content and you spoke Russian very fluently.
Yeah. Okay. Well, pronunciation is something I like to practice. I like to really copy sounds, and you'll see later when I talk about word history why I like that. But yeah, it's something I studied for a long time. I eventually got kind of bored of it because I reached a ceiling. But yeah, I woke this love of languages inside me. That was like, this is great. This is amazing. I can see the whole world through this lens. So yeah, I failed my science exams, but I passed my language ones. I did extra modules, Ukrainian and Russian. I passed those, and I was like, well, this must mean something. I don't know. I left university and did a couple of jobs in Leeds. I actually met a girl who I got into a relationship with, and she's from Argentina. She got everywhere. She lived in Mexico, Switzerland, Costa Rica. And I was like, I was already traveling a little bit in Europe. I'd been to Belgium. I think I'd been to Spain itself as well. I'd been to, I think, Latvia too. I've been to many places. And I enjoyed it. And then she just opened my eyes like, oh, you can actually live somewhere else and like spend more than a week there. And it just flipped a switch in my brain. And I started Googling, like, how can I do this? How can I do it? And there were many answers, like you need to do a transfer or work for a company that's got a transfer program or something like that. And then I saw become an English teacher. So I was like, wait, okay, this sounds interesting. I already speak English. I'm a native speaker. What about this then? And I started volunteering. I did an online TEFL first. I passed that, but that was just 120 hours. Yeah. And then I went and volunteered in Leeds. Every Saturday there was a guy called Nick who has a business called English for All, I think it was. And it was like refugees that had just come and migrants that had just moved to Leeds that needed to improve their English. A lot of Polish people, actually. Okay. I thought, yeah, let's try this. And I just loved it. I was like, this is great. This is really fun. Let's do this. And then a couple of years later, I got my CELTA. Yeah. In 2019, I moved to Spain, and I've been here ever since. 2019 till today. The CELTA is pretty impressive. How long did that take you to? A whole month it took me. Wow. Yeah, I took a bit of a leap of faith, really. I was doing I was a technician on the phone in a call center, a first line technician, And in July of that year, 2019, I said to them, like, I'm going to leave in August. And I paid for this course. I'm going to do it. I had no idea what I was going to do afterwards. So I passed it. And then I was like, right, it's time to look for jobs now because I have no job. I have no future at the minute. Luckily, I found one pretty quickly in Barcelona.
Well, with the CELTA qualifications, it's just that huge leap above a TEFL. What you find is the TEFL gets a lot of people into teaching, but then if someone's got a degree in English or a CELTA or even a Delta, then they're just a league above. And I think the audience are going to see, and they can probably hear already, the way that you express yourself is so clear. And I suspect that has come from your training through CELTA and obviously experience in the classroom. You said two things just now. You said, I saw the whole world through a different lens. That's a great expression. How else could we express or say that? How could we break that down for the audience?
Well, a lens is what's on a camera. So if you use a different lens, you see things in a different way. Closer or further away, or maybe a wide angle lens, a different color, a filter.
Yeah.
So it's like seeing life through different eyes, you could say, through a different person's eyes. That's
through a different perspective as well. Yeah. And then you said about your the partner that you met, and she had got everywhere. I love the fact the word "got" is just brilliant in English. We just use it for everything.
It's for everything. Got up, got with, got down, got that. Yep.
Yeah, and she had.
You can bet there's a phrasal verb. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can bet there's a phrasal verb to do with "get" for everything.
Yeah, and it just means that she had travelled to many places. She's got everywhere, which is really cool. Now, a few questions about your videos first. How did you find this style that you've got for your videos? Was it something that you've taken from the classroom, or something that you've established just for the videos themselves?
I think it came naturally based on what I've done in the classroom. I like to be really concise and really to the point. Like I saw lots of videos that were very waffly. We're going to have to explain that word, I imagine.
Waffly,
they're a bit waffly. They're a little bit like they go on for too long or they're too slow. So I wanted this punchy style that's like, look, here's a mistake you didn't notice you were making. Here's how to fix it. It's super easy. Because I do think it is easy. I think a lot of teachers overcomplicate things sometimes.
Yeah.
So I wanted this, this punchy style, and I just make whatever topic inspires me on the day. As for the topic itself,
I mean, some of your videos, the one where you're taking a train, I think it's just so good because literally it's a real life situation, and here is all of the vocab that you're going to come across during this experience, and it's just straight to the point, like you said. And because we've got such a short attention span at the moment, it's called the TikTokers attention span. You know, if you don't keep the attention of your viewer, they are literally scrolling, and that's it. And I think it's the same in the classroom. I don't know if you've noticed it with the younger generations coming through your classes. It's really difficult to keep their attention, and it's changed over the years. We have to adapt. We have to adapt our classes for this attention span. And I think it's quite respectful as well, knowing this from your audience and not wasting their time. It's like, listen, here's what I'm going to teach you. This is how you're going to pronounce the TH, and this is how you do it. So for anyone that would really enjoy the videos that James does, I 100% recommend checking him out, and I will list all of his contacts below after this episode. So on this show, as you know, it's called Real Life, Real English, and we like to talk about a passion that our guests have. Now, James has quite a few passions, so we're going to talk about lots of different things, and one of them, James is going to do the majority of talking because I had to ask him what it was, and I'm an English teacher and I'm ashamed I didn't know what it was. Etymology, is that how you pronounce it?
Etymology is right, yeah.
Etymology. So basically, it's the history of words and where they came from. Tell us why this is a passion of yours, how you came across it, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, so it was what I spent too much time on Wikipedia is the answer. Like when I was at work, sometimes if it was a quiet period, I mean, and there was nothing to do, sometimes I would just go on Wikipedia. And because I was interested in languages, I decided to look up the language themselves. Like, okay, Polish language. What does Wikipedia say about it? Maybe I can learn some new grammar or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there was a lot of etymology, and then I started noticing patterns between different languages, and I started thinking, why are they the same? Why do we say hands and the Germans also say hands? But why do why do the Spanish say manos and Portuguese mãos and stuff like that? Why are they similar but ours is different? What happened there? And the easy explanation is, but they're just different languages. But why? And then you notice there's, especially between English and the Latin languages, even more words that are similar. This happened in my classes. So I find that a lot of my learners tend to use the Latin-based words in English all the time. Like they'll say return instead of go back.
Yeah.
And I was like, but if you look at Swedish, they say something like tillbaka, which means go back, I think. It's like, what happened there? Why is this the case? We're supposedly not related to this language, but we have these words that are in there. What happened there? And that's when I was like, let's investigate this.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I've got more refined in my knowledge. I started watching YouTube videos. I learned about Proto-indo-european, which is the ancestor language to all European languages.
Okay.
Well, how English and German and Swedish and all that came from Proto-Germanic, a language in the past that was it was one language for this tribe, and then eventually they spread out and made English, Scots, Dutch. And the same thing happened with the Latin languages. You had these people going south towards the Italic Peninsula, the Iberian Peninsula,
Mm-hmm.
and how they separated. But it was once the same language. And when you look for roots, you can find the most surprising links between words. Even the word rain in English, it's Regen in German.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also related to a Spanish word. Can you guess which one it is?
No, and I should know my Spanish. I'm thinking rain, llover, llovía.
Llover, yeah, but it's not related to that one. Regar. To water your plants.
Yeah. It's true.
But it came from the same root. And that's what's fascinating about it. Even I think the word litter, like to throw rubbish on the floor, I think it came from a word that meant to lie down or to have something lying down or on a surface.
Okay.
And it's supposedly related to the Catalan word llit, which means bed, which you lie down in a bed. And I was like, I saw that and it just blows my mind to see like, okay, semantic shift happened many times over. And now we've got these words that are different in our languages completely, but they came from the same place. And it makes my brain tingle.
It's really cool because I wasn't very good at languages at school. I wasn't very good at school, to be honest.
Me neither. Really.
However, learning a second language really opens a part of your brain to different vocabulary. And one of the episodes, which I think is coming out next week, actually, we're talking about how you have different personalities in different languages. Now, you obviously have experience with many different languages. And do you find that you have different personalities, or it's easier to express yourself in a certain way in a certain language?
Definitely. Of course, I feel most comfortable with English. Even it changes with dialects. Like when I speak standard English to my my students, I feel very official. I feel very clear. But then when I go back home and I start speaking, because I'm from Yorkshire, we speak like you know what it's like. It's more funny. It's more like open and chilled out. And then in Spanish, I don't know. It's more like cheeky, I think.
Yeah.
You must feel the same way because you speak Spanish,
100%.
don't you?
Yeah. 100%.
You see this shift. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like it gives you a different life to lead almost.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with if you like accents and things like that. Just speaking with a different accent makes you feel different. So I'm from the south of England. They call it the farmer's accent, but Yorkshire's got that kind of twang to it as
Same
well.
connotation as well, yeah.
Yeah.
You get the same thing when you change accent, like you get a character to play, don't you? A drunk Scotsman, for example. I used to have a neighbour who was from Glasgow, and he was that like drunk Scotsman type. Oh, you're all right, James. Yeah, I want to go over see the parakeets and stuff like that. Oh, all right. You want a cup of tea, lad? All that. And he was like this really boisterous guy. You get to flip into that character.
Yeah, you become a completely different person, don't you?
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to point out, because obviously before this episode, I'm looking through a lot of your content, and one of your latest pieces of content is on happiness, and you did like a podcast on happiness. And one thing James does really well is he grades his language for the level, but it's not just grading the language, as in the vocabulary that he chooses, but it's also your pronunciation. And I noticed as this episode was going through from beginner to intermediate, and then you got to advanced, basically in the advanced section, it was like you were talking to your mum. It was like full on Yorkshire accent. And when you're learning a language, especially English, we have so many different accents. And if you're just listening to your teacher that has a standard accent, and he or she's speaking classroom English, you're not really learning proper English. It's not preparing you enough for when you go back to the UK. Yes, you're learning the vocabulary, etc., but you're not training your ear for what you will hear when you're interacting in a real life situation. So one thing that James does really well is adjusts you and adapts you ready for those real life situations. And I think because you have this passion of language, it's definitely given you an advantage over so many other teachers to be able to do what you do.
Linguistics has been the key. I just want to stop you because I need to plug in my charger. I've forgotten to switch on the switch at the wall, and it's going battery saving mode. 2 seconds.
That's fine. Quickly do it. While James is doing that, what we're going to talk about next is linguistics. So we're going to go on to. You still there? Yeah. So we're going to go on to talking about linguistics. Obviously, we've spoken about the history of words and the history of language. Let's go a little bit deeper and talk a bit more about pronunciation and things like that. How did you get into that as a hobby or?
It came from etymology, to be honest, because I remember I was always fascinated by dialect words. So I grew up around my grandparents, and they speak really, really quite dialect. I don't know how to describe it. Like the difference between an accent and a dialect. An accent is more just changing some pronunciation features about your accent. So saying like face instead of face, it's not that much of a difference. But with a dialect, it's like a different word that you can use that maybe a standard English speaker wouldn't understand. And I always wondered, why do we say that? Why do we say note instead of nothing? Why do we say lig instead of lie? Why do we say lake instead of play? Where does that come from? Because I knew that words came from somewhere. And I was like, where must that have come from? Because it's completely different. Lake, play, it's not the same. And when I saw that it came from Old Norse, the Vikings, who came to England to settle, they spoke Old Norse, while the Angles, the English people at that time spoke Old English. They could understand each other, but they changed it. They adapted to each other's speech. It almost became like a Creole.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, this is really interesting. Why does this happen? And that's when the pronunciation thing came. Like, why do we say face? Why do we say goat? Why do we say put and cut? Or shut, another word that rhymes with that, like bus instead of bass. And then that brings you to the trap bath split and I can't remember what the other one's called, but the bus cut split.
Yeah.
It's all connected, and it all has this history behind it. And then I was like, this is all why pronunciation features sound like this. It's all got a history behind it. It's been wonderful. It's been an adventure.
And
A
one thing
Wikipedia adventure.
yeah, I was going to say resources is on my list to ask you about here because you mentioned some YouTube videos. But one question, obviously, you're in a classroom, a physical classroom with students. Do you get a lot of your students saying, "Why is English pronunciation so difficult?" Here in Spanish, we
Yes.
just pronounce it as it's written. It's a very phonic language. Is it the same with other languages? I don't have experience with Polish or Russian. Is it the same that they pronounce it as they read it? Is English just an outlier?
English is a bit of an outlier. There are a couple of other languages. French is one example. They're not exactly 100% phonetic. They have a lot of silent letters. But yeah, Polish is basically 100% phonetic. If you see a word, you know how to pronounce it. The stress is always on the penultimate syllable. Russian is harder, but it's more phonetic than English. Catalan is very phonetic, although they have some reduced vowels, so it depends on your accent, but it's mostly phonetic. Yeah, English is the outlier.
It's
English
the
is the
outlier.
rubbish one. And yeah, you do get students complaining about it, especially with words like tough, through, thorough.
Yes.
You know, why is there only UGH? Why is it not oh? Like, well, it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and why have you got 3 different pronunciations for the same spelling? Yeah.
Because
You don't.
we never changed the system.
Okay, so you've got me really intrigued about this, and I feel bad not knowing more than what I do, being an English teacher. Now, I do a lot of pronunciation videos myself and things, but when it comes to the depth that you've gone into the language and studying it, where did you go to get started? You said Wikipedia. However, you also mentioned some YouTube videos. I'm going to give the viewers some resources here. If I can pick your brain, where should they go? Especially YouTube, because it's easier to digest material.
Some of the best ones that I've ever watched have been, there's one in Spanish, so if you're a Spanish speaker, watch Linguriosa. She's a woman who does videos about the history of Spanish, why certain things exist, the same thing as what I talked about. There's also Simon Roper.
Okay.
He's amazing. He does etymology videos, a lot of things about Germanic languages and Proto-indo-European. He's very relaxing style. It's like these videos are around 20 minutes long and it's really chilled out, but there's lots of information there. He really knows his stuff. And Rob Words as well. A guy called Rob Words.
Words. Perfect. We will link all of these in the description below because I think it is super fascinating to not understand where our language came from. And we see it on a yearly basis where there are new words popping up that the younger generation start inventing words. And we think that they're a little bit crazy or lazy. But then eventually it becomes...
They catch on.
Yeah. So in 100 years' time, they'll be talking about our generation inventing LOL and BRB.
Yep, the language archaeologists will be talking about it, I'm sure. It's happened in every single generation.
Now, one of the other topics that you said you'd like to talk about is adventure travel. So not just travel, we have adventure travel. Tell us a little bit about why that's a hobby of yours or why it's something you're passionate about.
Before, when I used to travel, I used to go to capital cities, and I still do. The most recent one I went to was Rome. And it's fun, you know, you get to see all these beautiful places that have been built over the years, and there's a reason why they're the capital cities and everybody goes there. But I mean, I live in a capital city, not a capital, but like a big city that's, you could say, the capital city of Catalonia. And you see lots and lots of tourists here, and everybody wants the same picture of the Sagrada Familia. Everybody wants the same picture of Tibidabo, the big mountain with the church on top of it. Everybody goes to the same beach, and it's nice, but there's a certain magic about going somewhere where people don't go. I know there's not really anything there. Sometimes it's just a village with nothing in it, or it's just a farm, or it's just, you know, a town. But there's something about it that's always fascinated me. I think it started when I can't remember the exact moment, to be honest. I just I started traveling a lot around Catalonia and was like, wow, this is really cool. Like Barcelona's fun, but there's also these really interesting places outside it that tourists would never see because they don't know about it. There's no way that you could know.
Yeah.
I started doing long distance bike trips and
Cool.
I just went through all these towns like, wow, this is cool. And then next town. Let's see how far we can go. I went at like 60 kilometers and things like that. And I was just like, wow, look at all these places. And then I watched another YouTube plug, Bald and Bankrupt. Everybody probably knows who he is.
Yeah.
And he did these travel episodes, videos through the former Soviet Union, basically. He went all across Russia to these little micro federations and states and things that no one would visit. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating because you would never see this. And I wanted to do it. So I decided to take a couple of trips of my own. And it's been really fun.
Wow, really eye-opening, I suspect. So let's talk about one of your trips, let's go to the first trip that you decided to take that was more on the adventure side of things than the tourist side of things.
I think, I went to, there's two of them I'd like to speak about. I went to Latvia. I went to Riga, which is the capital. But then we took, with one of my other friends who also really likes to go off the beaten track. There's a good word, off the beaten track. A good phrase. He's Polish, so we had a lot of good conversations, and he's into the same things as me. So we went to this small town called Pärnu in Estonia. It's mega popular in summer, but we went in winter.
Right.
There was nothing there, but I mean, it was an experience to go see all these like Scandinavian style houses. We went to watch an Estonian film with English subtitles, luckily.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, I'd never done this before, but we have the whole town to ourselves. Nobody's here. It was great. It was so much fun. We had like these typical Estonian drinks that I forgot what they're called. It was fun. And then we went
when you're on a trip like that, when you go somewhere where the locals are not used to seeing tourists, how do they treat you?
Depends. They were really just curious. They were like, they didn't say anything. They were just, you could tell they were looking at you like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? But they were really nice. They were really pleasant. In Spain, sometimes I get a negative reaction, unfortunately, but sometimes I get really positive ones. It just depends on the person. But mostly, met with curiosity, like, what are you doing here? And they like it when you take an interest in what they've got going on.
Yeah.
They feel seen, I think. They feel like someone's interested in them.
Yeah. And so here in Spain, when you've visited places and you get that awkward look of, what's he doing here? He's definitely a foreigner. Does that feeling change as soon as you start to speak their language?
Yeah, they almost seem relieved, to be honest. I've been told a few times, like, they would come up to me and be like, hello, do you, like, because they're struggling to think of the word. And I go, está bien, hablo español, o hablo castellano. And they're like, oh, thank God, oh, gracias a Dios. Pensaba que, so that stuff. I thought you were a foreigner just coming here. I don't know. And they're really relieved. It's always really funny. I say, well, I am a foreigner.
I am a foreigner, but I'm not a typical foreigner because I can speak a second language.
Exactly. I've been here for a while. You must get the same thing in Murcia, surely.
Yeah, all the time. And I think you just become something completely different in their eyes when you can speak and understand their language. They respect you more because they're used to it's a shame to say it, but when the English or the Brits, they come here on holiday and they don't even try to speak the language, they lose a lot of respect locally.
It's true, yeah. I always try to learn like the basic, like, I'm sorry I don't speak your language. Do you speak English in that language? There's nothing else, but at least they respect that.
Yes. And if you try, most of the people here, they have a level of English now where they can understand and get by in most situations.
Yeah.
But they still want you to try and speak their language out of respect that we're here visiting. So as soon as I have friends that come over, and a lot of my friends, they have learned the basics. They studied a little bit at school. So when we go to restaurants, they try to order in Spanish. And as soon as the waiter or waitress sees that they're trying, they will then just speak English anyway. But if another friend of ours that has no interest in languages, doesn't even know what hola is, They come and they just say, "Can I have a can of Coke?" The waiter's just going to speak to them in full-on Spanish, and they lose that respect. So I think it's a huge benefit to have not just the basics, but a little bit of the language of the place that you're going to visit.
Absolutely.
And it helps you out in so many different ways. Now, I'm going to point out two things that you said, because here, when people are learning English, when they're grading adjectives, they just use very.
Yeah,
it's
very
popular.
good, very bad.
It's very good. Yeah, it's very hot today. And when you were describing something just now, you used the word mega. It was mega popular. And I just thought, what an easy way to increase your vocab. Instead of very, just put mega. It's mega hot today.
Mega popular, mega hot today. Yeah, it's informal, but it's a good. We use it all the time.
Yeah. And I like these little tricks that we can give to our students that help them in their exam, because it increases their vocabulary score, but it also helps them when they're interacting and chatting to natives, because they do sound like a native, mega instead of very. I like that. And then you pointed it out, off the beaten track. How would you explain that to someone?
Oh, it's a tough one. Well, the track is the way you go, the pathway. And if it's been beaten, it's been used a lot of the time. It's the road everybody takes, the beaten track. And then when you find a track that goes another way that nobody uses or nobody knows about, you're going off the beaten track. You're not going on this one that everyone goes on, you're going on another one. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it's the best way to travel.
Yeah. The road less traveled, is that an expression?
The road less traveled, yeah, I think so.
As well. So that was Latvia. Tell me about your second trip.
The other one was Ukraine in 2023. Wartime Ukraine, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say wartime, depending on who you ask. But, well, Ukraine in conflict. And I went with my partner. She is Ukrainian, and it was an interesting experience. We went to Kyiv, the capital city, first, of course. From Poland, you can't fly. And obviously, people are not going to Ukraine because it's dangerous. So people don't want to be there. It's not somewhere you would go for a holiday now. But I wanted to see it. I'd never been that far east. Like, I'd been to Poland, but I'd never been to Belarus. I'd never been to Russia. And I always wanted to go to Belarus specifically because it was difficult to get to. The only way you could get there, like 7 years ago, was to fly into Minsk. You couldn't go across the border as a Brit. At least I think that's the case. So I was like, this is my opportunity. This is my chance to go see the former Soviet Union. I know it's not. They've taken a lot of the Soviet things away now in Ukraine because they don't want to be associated with it. But yeah, it was fascinating. And we went on a couple of trips between places, like between cities, and seeing it was amazing. And I would only call it off the beaten track because of the situation at the moment.
Yeah.
But people were very surprised that I was there. That was one thing. I was on the bus talking English, and people were like, even the driver was like, he'd had to take a double take on my passport. Like, he didn't say anything, but he just was like, okay. Yeah, what a fascinating trip. Really, really eye-opening.
Oh yeah, eye-opening could be one way of describing it. And I've been fortunate enough to travel as well. And what I've noticed when you go to different countries, you learn so many different things, not just about their history and their culture and things, but about yourself.
Yes.
So when you're in a place like Ukraine, obviously there is a lot of internal dialogue going on, I suspect. What sort of things did you learn about yourself while you were there?
I think that we all just, I like to live a peaceful life. Like, I enjoy, okay, there's two sides of the same coin. Another good expression. Two sides of the same coin. One, I get really excited when things are a little bit crazy around me. So I think, well, I'm going to a psychologist at the moment for ADHD, basically. I never even knew that I had it. It's been a discovery last year. So it makes sense that certain emergency situations make me feel kind of alive. I feel calm for once almost. I feel like I'm in control. I'm like, okay, there's things for me to look at everywhere. But also it made me feel like I just want to live in peace, really. I don't want to live somewhere where there's conflict and fighting and stuff like that. I like to be away from all that and just be in the peace. That was one thing I learned. Definitely calm.
And it makes you appreciate what we have here, but also not take it for granted. That's another really cool word as well, to take something for granted, because it can be taken away in a split second. You know, Ukraine, we have students that have moved from Ukraine to Spain, and talking to them, they still go back and things, and because of what we're fed on the news, you're expecting it to be just complete and utter disaster. And I said, how is it? How's your family? What did you do when you're back? And they're like, oh, we went to the cinema, you know, we went to this. And they're trying to live a normal life. However, there's just this huge risk around them that they can just be bombed at any moment.
It's such a juxtaposition, because I remember when I went and I was in Kiev, we went to go see a jazz show, just a jazz band, some accordions, you know, it was all a lot of fun in this bar. We walked out of the bar, and then like no less than an hour later, the airstrike siren is going off and you have to go to seek shelter again. It's like, we've just had this really fun time in this bar. Everyone was happy. It was literally like being in Barcelona. And you walk out and it's like, oh, we could be shot with a rocket right now. We better go take some shelter. And it's just this mad feeling from 100 to 0 or 0 to 100.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre thing that I think I've ever experienced, in a good way.
Yeah. Bizarre is a good word, because in Spain, I've used bizarre before, and they're like La Bazar, which is like a shop where you can buy everything. Here in Spain, like bizarre, how would you describe that to someone?
Very strange, like so strange that it takes you a second to process. I don't they have the word bizarro? I don't know. I thought they did, but maybe not. Maybe bizarro. I'm just making a mistake.
We do what they do, which if we don't know a word, we just put an A or an O on the end.
Yeah.
If they don't know the word in English, they just put ing on the end.
Yeah. I've got a friend who came to Barcelona. The bus door wasn't closing. And he just went, Señor, El Doro. And I was like, Michael, stop. La puerta, not El Doro.
El Doro, that's a great one. So when it comes to adventure travel, when you said about the topic, adventure travel, I was thinking more hiking, mountain biking, doing kayaking, things like that as like an adventure. That to me is an adventure. But there is this genre of travel, and I think there was a Netflix series on it where you just go to the most obscure places which not many people would be going to. And not that we would recommend going to some of these places, but what would you advise to someone looking to do a trip that is a bit different to the norm?
So do your research before and find out a lot of things about that place, depending on where it is. How do they feel about foreigners going there? How do they live? What are they like? And you should be an observer, in my opinion. You should be going with the mindset. It's all about the mindset. Like preparing, well, you'll probably be fine. Just prepare as you would to go anywhere. There's probably not going to be restaurants. You might not be able to pay by card. That's the only like precautions you need to take. But mainly just the mindset of, it's not a holiday. You're not going to go and relax, and it's not a break from your regular life, like as if you'd go to, you know, a week on a beach in Tenerife.
Yeah.
But you're an observer. You're an outsider looking in, take in what you can, try to put your biases aside. You will have them, and that's okay. But, you know, just be mindful, learn something, go in with that mindset. Like, I want to learn how is life different? How are these humans different to me? And how are they similar to me? What is life like there? And how is it different to mine? Always comparing, but in a good way. And that's, you'll learn a lot from that. If you just take that mindset, you'll learn a lot.
And do you have any plans for future trips?
Oh yeah, of course. I've got a list about this long. I've
Is
got
there
plenty of
anything
places I
booked?
want to go. Nothing booked, but I'm thinking of going, well, just some short-term weekend trips. I'm thinking of just going to some small French towns because we live near the French border. So me and some friends are going to go see places like Narbonne, Béziers. They're not really small, but Carcassonne as well. But big things, I'm thinking of going to, there's a couple of islands near Estonia. There's one called Ruunu and there's one called Kinu, and I want to go there. If I can make it. We'll see. And for the January... Sorry,
go on. For the general.
Well, for January, I've always wanted to go to there's a Scottish island, the Shetland Islands.
Yep.
They have a festival every more or less New Year's in January called Uphelliar, which is like a Viking festival. And they all gather in a big parade, set fire, like they've got torches with big fire on top of them, and they throw them on a boat, a Viking boat, and they send it, I think they send it out to sea. I want to go and see it.
That's cool.
So that's another one.
That's really cool. And how do you find out about all of these different places, festivals?
Spend too much time on the internet. I've read a lot on Wikipedia. It's a massive resource. You can find so much stuff on there. And just putting it on YouTube. Like if you find somewhere interesting, another place actually is Google Maps. Like scour the map on satellite view for like small islands or things that you can see. Like what stands out to you? Why? There's a place in Almeria that's all white. So I was like, what is this? You can see it from the satellite picture. Why is this big, massive sea of white here? And then you Google it, like Almeria. You can even use ChatGPT now. Why is there a sea of white on the satellite image? And then it'll tell you, and then you can research it on YouTube. You can go look at pictures. You have all the tools, Wikipedia, Google, YouTube. Use those and you can find anything.
Yeah, and I like what you said there, something that stands out.
Yes.
How would you explain that one?
If something stands out to you, you can. The way I always describe this one is can you imagine a line of people standing? Imagine if someone moves forward, you notice them. They're not in the line like everybody else. They stand out of the line. So it's something that you notice, something that is different from the things around it. So you notice it straight away. Stand out.
Yeah, and something that stands out to me is your passion for travel, but also you've got a very eclectic list of passions. From linguistics, I think, and travel. I said this on a previous podcast. If you're interested in learning a second language, you're normally very interested in travel.
Yes.
It comes hand in hand, and I think one thing that you and I have that is a massive advantage is the fact that we're native English speakers and we can go to the majority of places in this world and there is someone that speaks English. And I think that is the importance of learning English, is that it is the language that is recognized around the whole world. You can go
lingua franca,
you can go everywhere and get by with English. So super important. Now, you also gave me another topic to talk about, which is dancing. Obviously, the dance scene in Spain is a lot bigger than the dance scene in the UK. So was this something that you stumbled upon here in Spain?
Yep. Well, it was 2022. And to be honest, I'd just finished. I'd finished a relationship with that Argentinian girl. And I was looking for things to do. I didn't have many friends. I've been through a lot of different things here, so like life was quite tough. And I just wanted something to do. I kept going to these language exchange meetups, but I mean, some of them are a bit weird. Some of them are a little bit. They're dating meetups disguised as a language. It just depends on what the meetup was. But I was like, I need something more dynamic. I need something more like. I want it to be 50-50 boys and girls, so it's a bit more like. Fair, I guess, not fair, but like there's no hunting in a way. I want it to be an activity so we can bond over something. It's not just talking about the same thing every time. And I saw on Meetup bachata classes. I was like, I always wanted to dance salsa. I was always interested. Let's try it. And I just never stopped. It was amazing. The first lesson, I was like, wow, this is. I was rubbish and I couldn't move my feet, but I was like, this is amazing. I want to get good at this. Like, I want to try and really have fun with this. and yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
So your first class, you said you weren't very good. There's an expression that we use when we're talking about people that can't dance in English. I'm definitely one of them, which is they have two left feet.
Yep.
Which yeah,
I
you're
had
just
two left
tripping over
feet.
your feet. And
I kept looking at my feet like that.
It's that whole, for me, dancing, especially when you're trying to be so coordinated with something. Can you remember when you were younger, you used to try and pat your head and rub your stomach?
Yep.
Doing two things at the same time. Yeah. I just couldn't coordinate myself. And I'm quite an athletic person. So you'd think that I'd be able to dance and coordinate my feet to go one way and my body to go another. And I just couldn't. So
it's a skill
what
you have
took
to learn,
you, what took you from being that person with two left feet to where you are now? And how would you grade yourself at the moment? This could be quite funny. Obviously, in English language, we have A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. So if you're to scale to grade yourself on that scale, where would you be?
C3. I mean, nah. I think probably between B1 and B2. Like I'm at the point where I can go and have a good dance with almost anyone at a social, but I'm not an expert. I'm not like a pro dancer. And I can when I get filmed, I still see like inconsistencies and things, and I'm like, but yeah, about between B1 and B2, I would say.
Okay, and there's a tip here, I think, that we could give to the listeners. Obviously, you said when you see yourself dance, so they're recording you, you can pick up your own mistakes there. Do you recommend that your students record themselves, or do you record them in class?
Yes.
Is that something?
It's very embarrassing to hear yourself speak in another language. And I remember when I used to send voice notes in Spanish, and I was like, I don't ever want to hear myself do it. But then the second that you actually try and listen, you see straight away the mistakes you're making. You should record yourself. Just use WhatsApp, like the voice messaging thing. Everyone has it. You can message yourself, or message a friend if you really want to exchange between each other. Use it. Absolutely, record it. Maybe not with video because it's extra step and it's also embarrassing. But use voice notes.
Yeah. So I'm a person that learns by doing. I have to go and do it. I can't sit down in a classroom and learn it through a textbook. And this is why my style of teaching in the classroom is so dynamic, because that's how I want to be taught. And when it comes to learning Spanish, for me, it was just a matter of going out and speaking Spanish. So one thing, or a couple of things, but one main thing that I have lost, or I don't have the ability, is to read in Spanish. And I'm really bad at writing in Spanish. I can speak Spanish, but when it comes to reading and writing as a skill, I'm not very good at all. And you will see on our TikTok pretty soon, I wrote in English an article on how training for a marathon is the same as learning a new language. And I translated it into Spanish and then read it in Spanish. And it was a completely different person speaking. If I was just to speak it in Spanish, it would be quite fluent. I would use different words. But when I was reading it, it was completely different to how I would have said it.
It's a completely different skill. It's something completely different. Speaking is one thing, writing is another. They're related, but they're skills that are separate from each other.
Yeah, and learning how to dance. Obviously, you're learning bachata, and you mentioned salsa.
Salsa as well.
Is that the same as learning two different languages, Polish and Spanish?
Honestly, yeah, because there are parallels that you can draw between them, where there are things that you learn in one that definitely help you with another one. 100%. The turns are almost the same, like learning to not push and also not to be so light. That applies to both dances. And just like you would learn a pronunciation rule or a grammar rule, you probably notice a pattern between the two languages, but they are different, and there are things that are completely different. So it's a good parallel to draw between them. Yeah,
that's so cool, so cool. And dancing, like I said, is something that doesn't come natural to myself, and probably doesn't come natural to many people. And James, you said as well, it doesn't come natural to you, but you were persistent and you kept going, and now you're at that in between B1, B2, so intermediate level. How long has it taken you to get to that level, do you think?
I think it took me about a year to get to the part where I felt really comfortable, even though I was still not amazing. I was just good enough that people enjoyed dancing with me finally. But yeah, it takes a lot of persistence to get there. You cannot just do it in 2 months and be like, yeah, that's fine. Maybe if you spend every day dancing, you can do it in 2 months. Same as languages. If you do it once a week for 2 years, you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you do it
And
like every day for 2 months, you'll go super high.
Yeah. And that's the exact point that I wanted to make, that there's a lot of people that they expect results straight away, and they're not going to happen. It's the exact same as learning a new skill, like dancing, like training for a marathon.
Yep.
It takes consistent effort. And there's some days where you think, wow, I've learned a lot of words today. And then there's other days where you think, oof, I don't think I learned anything today and I'm not progressing. That's the point where you need to be more consistent.
Yep.
To get to
Don't
that
give up.
next level. Yeah. And when it comes to learning languages, let's give a quick tip to our listeners. Do you have like a set time that you think they should be spending on learning a language?
It depends on the person, but I think, you mean a set time through the day?
Day, week?
When you first wake up. When you're making your morning coffee and you sat down, and a lot of people like to just go on TikTok. I know it's relaxing. Do it then. Do 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And if you do that every day, 365 times a year, the progress you'll make just by doing that is great. You have to do something good about it. You can't just use Duolingo, really.
No.
You can. It's a fun way to consolidate vocabulary. But if you're doing flashcards, if you're doing listening practice, just even a TED talk, you'll go far in 1 year. Every morning.
Yeah, we've spoken about passive and active learning, and how the importance of both of them. However, to take your language learning to another level is to take that passive learning, which is just on TikTok scrolling, and you're taking it in, but making it active, doing something where you have to concentrate. So if you go to James's TikTok page and you see one of his videos with the pronunciation of the TH, the difference between the number 3 and 3.
Yeah.
After you've watched the video, get your audio, record yourself going, my favorite number is the number 3. 3. 3.
Really record yourself there. Tongue out.
3. Yeah. And then that's now making it an active way of learning, and you're going to improve so much quicker. So before we end, I could chat to you for ages, James. You've got a massive amount of knowledge on not just the English language, but also on life itself. I'm going to ask you a question that a guest asked me recently, which is, what does happiness look like to you at the moment? And the reason I'm asking you is because your latest episode, your podcast, was all about happiness. And I thought that would tie in quite well.
I'll answer if you answer as well at the end.
I actually answered on a previous episode.
I'll have to watch it to get the answer. What is happiness to me? It's a complicated question, isn't it? Because happiness can either be being content with things over long term or being happy in the short term. And I can answer both. Short term, anything that brings you pleasure, whether it be drinking your favorite drink, watching your favorite film, or just going for a walk somewhere that you really like. But what makes me content, happy? Spending time with people that I like to be around, who I choose and think these are my people. Doing things that make me feel like I'm doing something useful, which is another reason why I love being a teacher. You're making a difference. That could be anything for anybody. For me, it's teaching. And appreciating the little things, which is what I mentioned in my podcast, actually. Sometimes just stopping and being like, wow, I'm alive and I won't be alive forever. Now's the time to just enjoy it's a cloudy day today. Yeah, it is. But why not just enjoy the smell of the air? Why not just enjoy the melancholy vibe and try and make it something positive? There is something beautiful in it. Stop and take the moment in, and that will make you happy, I think.
Yeah.
Even prisoners can do that in prison, and if they can do it, then you can do it anytime and anywhere. Always try to improve your living standard if you can, but also remember to appreciate the moment.
Yeah, there's so many little things that add up to big things that we take for granted. Yeah, really cool answer. Really cool answer. And after Aurelia was the guest and she asked me it was on my mind for a while, because it was, what's happiness for you at this moment in time? And it's like, well, it changes throughout our lives.
Yep.
You know, when you're traveling and you're in a place like Ukraine, happiness is a completely different thing, I suspect.
Yep.
And then when you get back, it changes again, and you go through these periods of your life where it changes. So happiness at this moment in time means one thing, but don't be scared to change what it means to you as well, and
it will change over time.
Yeah, really cool answer. Really cool answer. So before we end the show, I'll give you the opportunity to promote anything that you would like to promote. Obviously, you are creating some really great content for English learning that's completely different to a lot of the English teachers that are out there. And I wish I had the knowledge to be able to create the quality of content that you have, because it is great. So your Instagram, well, all of your socials are James Bradley English.
Yep.
So you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on YouTube, but you're also on some podcast streaming services. Tell us a bit about your podcast.
So you can find me on any social with that handle. It's always going to be the same. But on podcast services, Apple Podcasts and Spotify tend to be the most used ones. So I have 3 levels. It's listening practice. So if you're struggling and you don't understand native speakers, or you don't understand English when people speak it, that's what it's for. And I've got beginner's English with James, which is baseline level, really basic, really slow. Slow English with James, which is intermediates, a little bit faster, a little bit more advanced, and everyday English with James, where I just speak normally. They're the 3 that I've got. And yeah, the website that we've got on screen is just where you can find everything that I've ever made. Apart from short form video, I'm going to put every flashcard pack, every listening exercise. It's all on there. You can find it on that Gumroad page. I have Patreon as well, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend that everyone goes to check out James's socials and definitely follow him, because like he mentioned just now, a tip is first thing in the morning when you get up to ingest something, not just your breakfast, but also some knowledge. And James expresses and explains things in such a way where you will ingest it and it will stay with you. So thank you for all that you do, not just for people learning English, but also for us teachers as well, because we can learn from your style and adapt it and use it in our classes as well.
I appreciate all the nice comments, mate. It's really nice to hear some good feedback on the things I'm doing. And again, for this podcast as well, another thing that's inspired me as well is this ability to see teachers and see other people, their stories, and compare myself with them, see what they're doing. It's like a community, which is what is important in the end.
Yeah, we're an incredible bunch of people, us teachers.
You should get to know us.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of each show, I always ask the guest to recommend someone that we would invite onto a future episode. Do you have anyone in mind?
Yeah, I've got 2 people in mind. The first one is he's a mate of mine who also lives in Barcelona. He's called Chris, and people have probably seen him. He's from Instant English UK. That's his handle on basically everything. You'll probably find him. He has quite a lot of followers. Really nice and interesting guy. He's been to many different countries, so you can ask him a lot about that. If you can't get hold of him, because he's a very busy guy, there's another one called English with Finn, who I follow. He followed me actually on Instagram first. And I think that's his handle, just English with Finn.
Cool.
And he's also really good. He inspires me with his videos too.
Ideal. So we'll tag those in the description as well. I mean, this description is going to be really long because of all the resources
You've got a lot of homework to do, everybody.
Yeah. So thanks again, James, for your time, and hopefully we'll collab on something again in the future, because it's been really eye-opening, and I've enjoyed having you on here. So whether it's another podcast or we do a video or something together, or jump on a live for everyone, it would be
down for
really
whatever.
Cool. Yeah,
I'm down for whatever. It's been a pleasure.
A great expression to leave on. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah.
Which
up for something means to be down for something.
I'm up for something. So we got the opposites there. Yeah. And we'll leave people on that. I'm down for whatever, or I'm up for whatever, and they can research it and find out what it means.
Take a look at those. Yeah.
Ideal. Thank you, James, and we'll catch you.
Thanks very much.
Catch you in the next one.
It's been wonderful. See you later.
Bye.
Si disfrutaste de este episodio y quieres llevar tu inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a descubrir nuestros cursos online en theway.es, diseñados para mejorar tu fluidez y confianza en situaciones reales. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a transformar su aprendizaje. Visita ahora theway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen de Midterm cómodamente desde casa.